Is it George or Georgie?
I've never said Georgie.
After the last meeting, you called me
Georgie
out in the hall. I was just wondering if I could call you Stevie now. Or maybe
call me anything you want to.
Or maybe Governor.
There's seats up front if you want to come in. Okay.
If this is the direction your comments going, you can go ahead and sit back down.
That's okay. Yesterday, I exchanged 2 emails with Jesse, and I CC'd them to you 3. The first one says, good morning. The first one I said, oh, I'm sorry. Jesse sent me an email saying, good morning. The BOCC would like to thank you for your interest in the Natural Resources Committee. The positions have been filled at this time, but please continue to check back with us for openings and opportunities. Thank you. Then I replied, and I CC'd Luke and you and Stevie. Thanks for letting me know. Please, could you tell me the names of everyone that applied, how many got interviewed, how many were voted on, and the outcome of the votes? And then she replied, I will forward your email to Veronica to be treated like a records request. If I tracked Luke correctly last week, and that's hard to do because of all the non-sequitur fallacies he commits, commissioners don't need to disclose the votes they cast for volunteer positions. He said they have a constitutional right to keep their votes private. Is that correct? Am I stating your opinion correctly?
You are not. That is a gross misrepresentation of fact, because all of these votes were taken in an open meeting before the public. But that's a gross misrepresentation, which that's your purview.
Of the ones that Chairman Bradshaw selected. Now, I'm talking about all of the other ones, all the other ones.
Can I clarify what I think
please.
you're asking? You asked last week for us to disclose who we voted on in executive session before it went to the session when it was presented as the 3 names. And that is when you got the response that that particular vote was not something that was going to be disclosed. It wasn't the open meeting portion.
Okay,
you were looking for the
right.
executive session.
So what is your opinion on that, Commissioner Williams?
Well, I think that there needs to be a process by which we select people on these boards. We say that we have difficulty having people volunteer, but when we have a flood of volunteers applying, I don't think we're respecting that they applied by not communicating, not interviewing them, and not including the public in some portion of that, because these boards sit for 3 and 4 years. And so it's reasonable for us to have a meaningful dialogue of what the process is so that it's consistent across all of the committees.
So since you're limiting us to 3 minutes, I'm not going to be able to get to my second question, but I'm assuming that this is an hour-long meeting. If the entire hour isn't used by questions, is it the case that if we've already spoken once, we'll have an opportunity
yes,
to come back
but go ahead and
again?
ask your second question since I gave a long answer for the one you asked me.
Well, I will eliminate the long email that I sent, but it was basically asking how you guys came to be on the different positions that you represent, how you came to be assigned to the various different liaison positions. I didn't get a full response, so I requested it again. But basically, Commissioner Williams, could you please give me your views on the assignment process? And it's my understanding that the liaison for natural resources is you, Luke. Is that right?
Correct.
And what about the Forest Service? Do they have because I went to a special meeting with the Forest Service manager, Jessie, I forget her name. You were there. And at that meeting, I asked her, she was going on about how the Forest Service is funded for fire and recreation, but there was no money evidently allocated for enforcement. And I think that's actually might be the first time that you and I ever agreed on anything, that there actually should be money for enforcement. I would just like to point out that since you are natural resources, here's the most recent issue, April 23, 2023, Conservation Flyer. Here's a press release from Wild Earth Guardians. And here is a almost 50-page document that talks about the over-the-services recreation plan. And all three of those basically point out that it's not worth the paper it's written on because there are all kinds of violations. That's certainly something that you should be concerned about, I think. And just so that you know, I'm going to BC next week for a conference called Responsible Recreation, Pathways, Practices, and Possibilities. And this is a group of folks that are actually interested in the environment. And I was wondering, Chairman, since you are going to be handling I guess you're going to be responsible for handling the Natural Resources Exploitation and Extraction Committee assignments, whether or not you're going to list the things that you're going to assign these volunteers to do, and whether or not one of them is actually going to be concerning the recreational impacts on the county. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
So to answer your question on how things were assigned, there was some predetermination when I came, and so I have not accepted the idea that someone is over a group because that's not the function of commissioners. So I think you would have to ask each individual commissioner of what they are identifying their over. I pushed for the idea of liaisons having to discuss in the open meeting back and forth, but that didn't get accepted. So you have to ask individually. I don't have anything of substance that I liaison with.
Thank you, and I would, but I'm quite confident that I wouldn't get it.
Okay, all right.
Ms. Sherry, your turn.